Good evening and welcome everyone to the Council meeting. To open the meeting, I would like to now allow time for personal reflection before we start the business of the meeting. Please be seated. The purpose of this meeting is to deal with a number of major issues for the well-being of Torbay and best interests of the community. My role as Civic Mayor is to ensure that today's agenda is dealt with efficiently and to allow fairness throughout the discussions. As you are aware, the meeting is governed by strict procedures or standing orders. To make sure that the meeting is run fairly, I expect healthy discussion and respectful speeches by councillors, and I will not allow repetition. I will also not allow any disrespectful personal comments against the other councillors, barracking, talking across the chamber, or talking loudly amongst yourselves. If I see any of these behaviours, I will stop the debate and call the meeting to order, and I will not hesitate to use standing orders to remove councillors from the meetings. If members wish to make a point of order or personal explanation, I will consider on a case-by-case basis when I take these. Although standing orders allow individuals to be seated during their speeches, I would prefer it, when possible, councillors to stand when addressing the council, so that you can be clearly seen and heard. When speaking, please ensure your microphones are turned on. If members wish to leave the meeting before it is finished, please follow Standing Order A25.7 and give your apologies before you leave via the Head of Governance Support. Please note that we are live streaming this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel to encourage more people to engage with other meetings. The proceedings of the council meeting will also be recorded. Please can attendees refrain from watching the live stream, as this will cause interference with our viewers. We are not expecting any fire alarm testings today. In the event of evacuation, you will hear a recorded message requesting you to evacuate the building. Please leave by the nearest exit. The Riviera Centre staff will assist you. Once outside, please assemble in the front of the tennis courts to the seaward side of the building. Please also ensure that all mobile phones and iPads are turned to silent. Apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
Madam Mayor, all members are present this evening.
I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of December 2024 to be signed as correct record. Is there a seconder? I will now take the vote. All those in favour? I believe that's unanimous, thank you. Have members any non-pecuniary or disposable pecuniary interests in any of the matters on today's agenda? Councillor Timon?
Thank you. I would just like to declare that I am a governor at the Spires College and therefore declare an interest in regarding to petition. I appreciate the petition is predominantly about St Margaret's, but as the other school, which it has a hearing impaired unit, I think it appropriate that I declare.
Thank you. Have officers any personal interest in any of the matters on today's agenda? Okay. I'm pleased to be presenting a long service recognition certificate this evening to Jacqueline Shaw, who has completed 20 years of service. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Jacqueline for her incredible dedication to public service in Torbay. Would the Chief Executive please join me in presenting?
Jacqueline, if you'd like to come and join us.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you want to turn around and Jean will take a photo for you?
I am pleased to welcome Dan Hammer, Head of the Virtual School and Vulnerable Pupils, to give a verbal report to the Council on the virtual school. Mr. Hamer, would you like to come forward to give your presentation?
All right, hello. Thank you, members. It's my first report as head of the virtual school. Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to start with expressing my thanks to my predecessor, Jane Einert, who retired after setting up and running the virtual school for the last sort of 10 years. Without her work, I wouldn't have had such a successful service to pick up on. As of November 2024, when I wrote my report to governors for the last academic year, there were 242 children being supported by the virtual school. Our role is to support all children who are cared for at this time, but also through extended duties, work with all children with a social worker, all children who are, or young people who are care experienced, and work with other agencies to support those children for whom we have a corporate responsibility and corporate parenting. We have inclusion as a core belief. So to make sure that we are supporting that, we work across schools. So we are currently supporting several schools in a When the Adults Change programme, led by a nationally recognised expert, Paul Dix. We are also working on trauma-informed work, helping trauma-informed practice across all schools, both within Torbay and outside in the areas where our children go, which are as far afield as Lancashire, Liverpool, coming down through Kent, and all the way in pretty much every area of England you can imagine. We also have attachment-aware training that we offer across all partners to, again, develop that inclusive practice. On top of that, we're also, through the lead members' contacts, being able to work with an agency that's looking to provide further opportunities for our young people, for those children that would benefit from access to independent education, otherwise there's private school education. We're able to look towards bursaries, we're able to look towards link work with those other schools, again, creating a range of opportunities for our cared for children for whom we are the corporate parents that would be otherwise unavailable to them. So it's creating that breadth, that depth of opportunity. Outcomes, 90% of our 16-year-olds left with a qualification, only 3 did not, which stands up very well compared to the local area, up to the national figures. We also support maximal attendance and minimal exclusion. We're very keen, as I've said before, on inclusion. It's our core belief. We believe children need to be included in their local schools, working with their local families, working with their peers to gain a real engagement in their own community. That also works with our SEN needs children. A significant number of our children have needs for social, emotional and mental health. So most of those children are in mainstream settings when they've got an EHCP. Most are in the local area. They're all able to access social opportunity, which we enhance by extra opportunities such as Get Bowling, Get Gritty, leaflets, other options that we're doing to develop motor skills, develop social skills, develop a rich and balanced social life for young people in their communities. It means they're able to integrate with peers, but it's also beneficial to their peers, because the recent research that came out of Durham University and was celebrated in the press only a couple of days ago talks about segregation. And it talks about segregation not by necessarily gender, not necessarily by ethnicity, but segregation by social grouping, by academic ability, by life chances. And the more you segregate, the less you achieve, because children's outcomes are always negatively impacted by segregation, and that's demonstrably true. So our next work, our children have significant trauma. They have a significant impact on their life, on their outcomes, because of their experiences before they move into care. Clearly, care is not something that we do as a local authority lightly. So we look to close the gap. That's our next thing. We absolutely want to close the gap between the outcomes at Key Stage 2 for those children and their peers. We want to focus on English and Maths at Key Stage 4, because there is a gap there. It's better than the national gap. It's better than the gap for other disadvantaged groups, but it's still a gap. We want to look at linking extended duties, the work of my vulnerable pupils team and the work of my virtual school, to make sure there's a through continuum for all children, regardless of the level of intervention and support their families need. We want better provision for working with care experienced, looking with the Devon and Torbay devolution powers to make sure that we actually have a plan, not for leaving school, but for transition through adulthood and into that normal expectation of adult life. And we want to develop our offer to our kinship parents, to our carers who are not the birth parents of children, but our family members who are working very hard, often in very challenging circumstances, to meet the needs of children, that we also meet their needs, but we're not the corporate parent. They're acting in that role. I have loads more to answer, but I do have a full report. I have already submitted that to the governing body and to the corporate parenting board, and with your permission, I'd like to submit that report with the papers and the minutes after this, so you've got more detail to read.
Thank you, Mr. Hamer. On behalf of the Council, I'd like to thank the virtual school for the excellent work they do to support the young children in Torbay. Thank you. Has the Leader of the Council any announcement that he wishes to make? And I understand the Chief Exec has no announcements that she wishes to make?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Has the Overview and Scrutiny Coordinator any announcement he wishes to make? The Council has received a petition requesting the Council to stop the closure of the hearing unit at St Margaret's School. The petition has approximately 1,638 signatures, which qualifies with the Council's petition scheme. Please refer to page 17. I understand that Miss Felicity Morris would like to speak on the petition. Welcome to the meeting, Miss Morris. Would you please take a seat at the microphone?
Thank you.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes, and I will let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining.
Lovely, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I've brought one of our teachers of the deaf, Mrs. Down, to translate my words into British Sign Language. The deaf community is deeply invested in this case. Many may be watching from live stream. We have some in the audience as well. Ensuring accessibility for all is essential. I stand here today because over 1,600 people have made their voices heard. Our petition's overwhelming support challenges Children's Services decision-making, which we believe violated due process and statutory requirements. This is not just about St Margaret's. The closure of the hearing support unit at the Spires College means children are losing both primary and secondary support. This is not just a resource being removed, it's an entire pathway of support being dismantled. We have been accused of spreading misinformation. But what exactly is this misinformation? Our petition was fact-checked by the Council's governance team before release. The articles and news reports reflect the real concerns of parents. Are their fears misinformation, or is this an attempt to silence criticism? Perhaps the real misinformation lies in Children's Services' own inconsistent and inaccurate documentation. The school was informed of the closure in July 2024, yet the official decision record claims it was made on the 18th of October. That's 2 days after parents had already been notified. How can a decision be communicated before it's even been made? Children's Services argue that because EHCPs remain unchanged, no formal consultation is required. Yet both government guidance and the Council's own policies state that any changes to SEND provisions must involve consultation. Other councils, Lambeth and the Hamilton Lodge in Brighton, have followed this process. Why hasn't Torbay? The Hearing Support Unit at St Margaret's is a community, not just a classroom. Deaf children learn British Sign Language together. They build confidence. They embrace their identity. This comes from being together, not isolated in the hearing world. With specialised support in British Sign Language and cued speech, it fosters inclusion, connecting hearing and non-hearing students. We're told that only 50% of spaces in the unit are filled, but this figure is in fact 63% when including children outside of Torbay who attend the school, with 2 more confirmed in the coming years, bringing it to capacity. Additional families have also approached the school themselves, proving demand is not declining. Children's Services claim to support a graduated response to need, but then they use EHCP numbers to justify the cuts. This ignores children with moderate to severe hearing loss who rely on this unit but do not have EHCPs. Erasing them from the data is a misrepresentation of need. So I ask, who is truly spreading the misinformation? This fight is about more than one school. It's about accountability, transparency, and the futures of children who depend on these services. We call on decision makers to listen, engage with families, follow the laws designed to protect these children, and overturn this misinformed decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Morris. Please take your seat. Under the Council's petition scheme, as this petition has reached the 1,000 signature threshold, it is subject to debate. I will now ask the Chief Executive to confirm the options available for members with regards to the petition.
Of course, Madam Mayor. Members, in accordance with the Constitution and the petition scheme, there are 3 options available to the Council this evening. The first is not to take any further action at all. The second is to make recommendations to the decision maker. And lastly, to request further investigation into the matter, for example, by a relevant committee.
Thank you. Can Councillor Bye please put his motion to the Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm going to propose that the petition be referred to the Children and Young People's Overview and Scrutiny Sub-Board for further investigation and as part of its review arising from the Councillor call for action on the same issue. So I want to say thank you to Felicity Morris for bringing the petition to the Council meeting and speaking so eloquently, and I want to thank Councillor George Darling for launching the call to action, which was supported at the Overview and Scrutiny meeting. As I explained to Overview and Scrutiny, I will be happy to attend any meetings and share my thoughts and observations, and Cabinet colleagues will seriously consider any reasonable recommendations that come from Overview and Scrutiny. But it is an incredibly complex issue, as I think members on both sides of this chamber understand. The decision made by our Director of Children's Services is in the context that Torbay Council commissions 16 places in 2 hearing impairment units, with only up to 8 of those places currently taken up, meaning we have underused spaces at a time when we want to commission more spaces at Mayfield, for example, to meet the needs of youngsters with complex needs who cannot be educated in a mainstream setting. We are bound by a safety valve agreement which limits the total number of places, and that was signed up before I became the lead member for Children's Services. I would like members to understand that the great majority of pupils with hearing impairment in Torbay are educated in mainstream schools with individual support needs to support their individual impairment and requirements. So overview and scrutiny can absolutely look at the figures, because what's been raised by the petitioner this evening is different to what I have been advised by professional colleagues, and perhaps visit some of those schools, mainstream schools, where youngsters with hearing impairments are supported in mainstream settings. For the current children and young people being supported by the units, Torbay Council have agreed to fully fund each individual child at both settings to fully cover the costs of everything detailed in their EHCPs, their Educational Health and Care Plans, including all equipment and any specialist support or intervention which they are currently receiving. And I'm very pleased to announce that in the last few days we have heard that Devon County Council will match that. They will support their children in our schools in the same way. That has only been very recently confirmed. The Torbay Hearing Impairment Advisory Service remains unchanged, with support being given to all children with a hearing impairment in all our schools, regardless of whether or not they have an EHCP. And Torbay Council pledges to continue to run the community offer, which has historically been run by the advisory team, but through the units, so that this offer continues to be available to the whole deaf community of children, and that will be supported by our family hubs. Officers sincerely believe that this is no key or significant change, as no specialist support or provision is being removed. They believe genuinely that the same children will remain in the same settings with the same support, but instead of it being a commissioned arrangement with empty places, it'll be support for individual children meeting their needs.
Councillor Barr, you have 30 seconds.
St Margaret's is a single academy trust. The Spires is actually continuing, the head has told me, with a support unit from its own resources. If the funding were available, St Margaret's could actually be free to do the same. We all want the very best for all our children with special educational needs and disabilities. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor David Thomas.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. I rise to second this, and I will reserve my right at this point. Thank you.
I now invite debate. Councillor Long.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is a disgrace that the Council finds itself in this situation. It is no surprise to anyone that a decision of this nature would be controversial. Therefore, there is even more reason for this decision to have been made in an open and in a transparent way. It has been a shame, therefore, that the Conservative administration have been hiding behind the fact that this is an officer decision. And there has been a record of this under this administration, what with the pitch and putt, the palm tree massacre, and now this. Just because it is an officer's decision does not mean that this decision had to be made in the beginning behind closed doors. And any cabinet member worth their salt facing this kind of decision should insist on the decision being made at a public meeting in an open and transparent way. And I'm sure that the previous cabinet member for children under the previous administration would have made sure that that happened. It has become clear, as has been highlighted, as this item has become unearthed, that there has been some confusion between the council and the schools over exactly how many children are involved in terms of needing support. This is reason enough for the decision to be paused. For this and for other reasons, the Lib Dem group have tabled the amendment that was included in the script before us, that is in my name and that of Councillor George Darling. And this calls for the decision maker to pause the decision whilst Children's Overview and Scrutiny does its work, and to allow for further full consultation. Now, the Cabinet Member for Children has a reputation for not reading his paperwork, so I'm not clear whether he just missed the significance of this or was happy for the decision to be made by officers behind closed doors and for this council to be officer-led. Either way, it's not a good look, and I really feel that Councillor Bye should consider his position in light of what's happened and consider his position. Thank you. And I'd like to propose the amendment. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor George Darling.
Happy to second and reserve my right.
Okay, I'd like to call a 5-minute adjournment to allow time to reflect. Thank you. Can we all take our seats, please? Thank you. Thank you. I now invite debate on the amendment that Councillor Long has tabled. Councillor Steve Darling.
Sorry, the last time I spoke, Jenny heckled me by imagining chasing a rabbit, so I'm just making sure somebody's keeping her awake. So, thank you, Madam Mayor. St Margaret's School has a very close place to my heart. My youngest lad went to school there, and I was blown away by the inclusion that I saw there happening with those with hearing loss. The fact that the school has such a positive culture around signing and making sure that youngsters are actually trained throughout the school, and many youngsters really positively engage with this as an opportunity around British Deaf Language and learning signing. So it is an exemplar school around this. And I would also reflect to colleagues within this room that we haven't engaged with Devon County as strongly as we could around this issue, or at least the decision, because I understand that we probably, well, not probably, almost certainly inherited the hearing unit when we became a unitary authority. So for Devon not truly to be engaged as strongly as it could be around this is disturbing, because we know that children from Devon use this school to good effect. And I know that children from Devon actually have significantly benefited from when I visited the school. I visited the school for the first time as the MP for the area on the day that they had received the news of the closure this summer. And on that day, I was sharing with youngsters the fact that I went to a special educational needs school in Exeter. And I was sharing with them that whilst at the time I believed the school was the best school in the world ever, I realised that that actually, as a student, I had not got the deep roots in my community that many others who go to a local primary school do. And the fact that this unit mostly serves youngsters from within a reasonable distance of this school, rather than a specialist offer up in Exeter that may be serving the peninsula, or now relocated to Exmouth for those with profound hearing loss, is an opportunity of those youngsters to be supported within their communities. So for me, as somebody with a disability, I have walked a very similar road to what these youngsters are doing, and I understand deeply how important it is to have an inclusive community, a community that understands you at school and wills you on. Because that, I know as somebody with a disability, that actually having that peer support, having somebody who has walked that same road as you and being able to share the challenges and the way that you deal with them is extremely important. Whilst the new proposals that the council have around this, of that close support within schools, those youngsters will not have that peer support. So I would ask the local authority to, I would ask colleagues here today to give this some serious thought and think, how would you be? And I will leave you with an example of a young girl who I met this autumn who was being taught in another school not too far away from St Margaret's, elsewhere in Torquay, who said that she really struggled, she felt bullied, she was not willing to go to school,
and she was deeply upset. And it was mostly because not of the
You have
teachers...
30 seconds remaining, Councillor Darling.
Thank you. It was mostly not because of the teachers failing to support her, it was because of the culture of the children within the school. So I fear this is a Robin Hood situation, and we need to pause and conduct that consultation so we see the full picture. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any further? Councillor Mandy Darling.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll be brief because Councillor Darling-S has really said a lot of what I was hoping to say. But one thing I will say, this is a very emotive issue, but we must keep the needs of the children right at our hearts here and see the importance of the peer-to-peer support that these children have in the unit. Like Councillor Darling Senior, actually, I'm older than him, sorry. Like Councillor Darling, the middle. I also went to a special education establishment, but prior to that I was in mainstream education, and even with support, not having that peer support from others who maybe share the disability that you have is very much lacking and very isolating. And I think the decisions we are making now will impact these children for the rest of their lives, because the confidence that is built from peer support will stay with them for a long, long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Timon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, may I remind members of my interest as a governor at the Spires College. And in that capacity, I've been a governor there for about 6 years. I'm well aware of the work that goes on in the hearing unit at that establishment. I also fully understand the importance of what goes on at St Margaret's to Spires, because very many of the children that go to St Margaret's transfer to the Spires College, and if they've gone through the right degree of support while they're at St Margaret's, it makes their transition into the support at Spires that much better and easier. So I do see the links, I do understand, and I have certainly given a lot of thought of this in discussion with the principal and the staff who provide the service at Spires, and I think I understand the position from Spires' point of view. I am not pretending I understand how that impacts on St Margaret's, and certainly St Margaret's being a much smaller school, the cost of the hearing impairment unit is a much bigger proportion of their total budget than it is at the Spires College, and solutions that can be applied in one may not apply to the other. The Spires College has no intention whatsoever of discontinuing the hearing unit or the provision to the young people that benefit from it, and we believe that the funding will be very much equivalent to the funding that has been in the past. And I think here it's important to say that what matters very much is the support that is given to those young people that need it. What the funding mechanism that gets there should be something that they don't have to worry about. That should be something that we're concerned with, etc. And I certainly hope that scrutiny will have a good look at what goes on at St Margaret's, whether they have the ability to provide the same service going forward as they do now or not. And I hope they will look at the Spires, but I can assure them that they're going to find that the Spires doesn't feel that this is going to have a major impact in the short term. But I'd like members to remember that the decision to close these units, and I don't believe it necessarily is a physical closure, it's a change of the funding mechanism for the young people within it that is sort of being dressed up as a closure. At least the establishments themselves can decide whether the physical unit closes or not. But I consider that this is not going to happen till September. The support is going to carry on from there. Whether we put a pause on the situation or whether we just wait for scrutiny to report and let officers and members, the Cabinet, take in that report and that analysis, I think will make relatively little difference to what actually happens. I think it's unnecessary to pause it because there are other elements like the changes that were taking place at Parkfield where the planning needs to go ahead for that. If that planning goes ahead and we find that we change things and it's wasted, then so be it. But I think if we pause it now, we don't gain anything and we might lose something in terms of progressing the plans. So I'm going to suggest that I don't really support that. I don't think it will make a big difference to the outcome. What matters is what scrutiny come back and find out. What matters is that scrutiny find a mechanism in which we can all be satisfied that the care given to the young people that need it is maintained in a way that is satisfactory to them, satisfactory to their parents,
Councillor Timon.
and satisfactory to the staff that are providing it.
Thank you. Councillor Cowell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it's very rare that we receive a petition with such a large number and end up in the position of debating it. So I commend those involved with producing a petition that actually qualifies for our complicated petition scheme. And there's one phrase that Felicity Morris used which really hit home, and that was, it's a community, not a classroom. And I think that was very powerful in what was a very eloquent presentation. And I think listening to the debate tonight and having been aware of the publicity around this issue for several weeks, I think we have to ask ourselves, are we 100% certain that we understand all of the issues that are around this particular unit? Do you feel fully informed that this decision was totally sound? And I'm not questioning the soundness of the officers behind this whatsoever, but there is sufficient doubt in my mind that there is contradictions in positions that really muddy the waters. And I think it's that lack of clarity that means that pausing, as is the amendment, we're not talking about anything else other, and indeed we've just heard from Councillor Timon that it makes very little difference between what's on the original proposal and the amendment. But it actually does say to the unit, the parents, the staff, the children, that we are serious about listening and reviewing and making sure that that process was robust. As has been said, it's a very emotive issue, very sensitive issue, and it's one that really impacts upon young people for the rest of their life. I think it's perfectly appropriate that we accept the amendment, and I will therefore be supporting it. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Twelves?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's not very often I rise to speak, but this is something I feel passionate about. And I have to agree with Councillor Mandy Darling to start off with, because there are children at the centre of this, and that's what we've got to remember. Those children are the most important part of this. And we want to make sure that we're doing the absolute best for them, but we're doing the best for all of our children in Torbay. I would like to say that I've worked with children who are profoundly deaf. I've worked with them in mainstream education, and I've seen how helpful it can be for both hearing and hearing impaired children to be working together in the same room, and the community that they build. Any learning establishment is a community. I would also point out that as a member of the Children's ONS, I would say every member of the Children's ONS is very passionate about making sure that the children of Torbay are served appropriately. And I know that there will be a robust investigation into this. We were all on board with the call to action. We all wanted it to go ahead. And I think it would be nice if we were allowed to therefore carry on with that without delay and crack on and get this sorted as soon as possible for the children and the families. And as we know, it won't be happening until September, and there's plenty of time for us to get these meetings in. So I won't be supporting the amendment, but I will look forward to doing the investigation. Thank you.
Councillor Verdi.
It's great that we can have a microphone and we can hear each other, whereas the children aren't afforded this opportunity. You know, I can switch this off and you can not hear me, but you can hear me when I switch it on, and that's what you're taking away from the children. The unit's been there for over 60 years and it's been dismantled on a whim. No consultation taken place, and it's all been done in the dark, behind closed doors. Why? No one was consulted. Was anyone consulted at the school or informed? Now, Councillor By visited the school in December, but the decision was made in October. Such a delay, you know, that shows a lack of care for the community of children. You know, we're here for the children, but today it seems like, you know, people who aren't voting for the amendment are here for themselves. You know, they just want to power play themselves. You know, the last point I just want to make is destroying a community of children, like some of the colleagues have said here. So I would urge you to go for the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas. David Thomas.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And I think what is important is we could very easily this evening as a council choose one of the other options, but for what is important for me is that this council supports overview and scrutiny, because effectively that's what this is about. And I don't think it is right for us to effectively cut the legs off from overview and scrutiny. We've heard a snippet of information. This is an extremely complicated matter. I was actually just wanting to talk about the amendment, but it is a case of actually straying into everything else, which is fine because it's really important. And it is actually, this is not a closure of a facility. This is about funding it a different way. It's about the money actually following the child. So effectively, if a child's needs are at this level, they'll receive an appropriate amount of money to provide their needs. However, if a child's needs are 2, 3, 4 times greater than what is required, that's the kind of funding that will actually be achieved and provided and given for that particular child. So instead of us actually paying for empty spaces, we're putting the money into the children, and that is the thing for me that really, really matters. It is extremely important, it's extremely complicated. Part and parcel of this, it's inextricably interlined and linked with the safety valve that we're currently working on. It cuts across so many things within the council. I am pleased that we have started this debate, because I do believe that this is the start of what will be a comprehensive piece of work that will come forward through overview and scrutiny. I can absolutely assure you that the Cabinet are in listening mode. the Cabinet will be engaging in that overview and scrutiny work, and look forward absolutely to the report that flows from that, and any reasonable requests that also flow from that. However, this evening I will not be supporting the amendment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Britt.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I had pondered whether to actually speak today or not, but in light of what's been talked about backwards and forwards, I think it's appropriate. The first thing I want to say is that as a parent of 5 children, 4 grandchildren, what I hear you say is very important, and I take it very seriously. And I want you to know that I am listening. That's number one. I want to thank you for taking the opportunity and working hard to produce this petition. It reminds me of back in the day where I spearheaded a petition, where I got St Margaret's Academy to help me on that, which was the saving of Plainmoor Pool, which was being closed. And I got rafts of petitions from the children and even individual letters. So petitions are the sign of democracy, which is fantastic. When I look at this, though, the crux of the matter is, when I read your petition, there's a service being provided, and then there's a fear that a new service will be detrimental to the children. Now, I don't want that to happen. I don't want anything to be detrimental to our children. I'm a corporate parent as a councillor, so I take that seriously. We have a system, though, within the council of looking at these things, and the system is through an overview and scrutiny committee. We had a call of action, which Councillor Darling rightly did, as any ward councillor should do if there's a major issue affecting their ward. I would do the same. So we had a call in. It's going to be looked at by the overview and scrutiny, and that committee is made up of 5 members across the floor here, but also 4 independent members, but 2 of which is vacant at the moment. But I have utmost faith in those members. I know them all. I've met with them. They are very passionate about children's services. We've got Councillor Cordelia Noor, Councillor Nicolai, we've got Councillor Twelves, Councillor Fellows, and I think Councillor Tolchild. So there's a mechanism to go through where this will be scrutinised. And I trust that the right things will be looked at, what was provided, what's been offered, is there a change, is it real, the detriment, and then we find out a way forward. I'm afraid what I found tonight, which is a part of politics I hate, is it's become politicised. And that, to me, I can't support the pausing simply because listening to Councillor Timon, it might have a negative knock-on for some other organisation. And in the meantime, we will literally be doing this review investigation in the next month. So we got the time span in which to look at things, hear it clearly. So unfortunately, I want it looked at, but I don't believe the pause is the right move. So I will not vote for that, but I will be voting that we get it through to the overview and scrutiny, which is ultimately the right body to look at all the issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Attiello.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And it's a very sad day when you hear about a potential closure of a school, especially a school that does a lot of work. Now, over the past few weeks, I have actually met people who've used the school, who are constituents of mine, and parents as well. And the levels of distress is unbelievable. But what I do want to say is that, you know, in my role as the Council's Racial Equality and Inclusion Champion is this decision that has allegedly been made, has the Council followed its public sector equality duties? Now, the reason I say that is because in one part of the public sector equality duty is the advance equality of opportunity between people who share a protected characteristic, in this case people who are hearing impaired, have a disability, and between those who don't. Now, to me, it seems like, from what I understand of this issue, is that no equality impact assessment has taken place, and I also understand that we're not being very inclusive as a council if we're going to go down the road of closing a specialist school, which will have detrimental effect to people who need the help massively. If the cabinet member for Children's Services could give me some answers and give some reassurances whether a equality impact assessment has taken place, or whether the council is simply breaking its public sector equality duty on this issue. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, if there's no further debate, Councillor George Darling, you reserved your rights.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to pick up on some points that my colleagues have mentioned, Councillor Thomas stated that the unit isn't closing. That's completely different to the letter that was given to parents. And I don't believe this is gaslighting, trying to pretend that it isn't closing. Councillor Timon stated that in his role as a governor for the Spires, he had an understanding of this, didn't think any provision was being lost. But that is completely at odds with the statement that the principal gave to the Overview and Scrutiny Children's Committee recently, where they suggested they would struggle to fund their in-house teacher of the deaf. Yep, that was given then. And Councillor By, I think the Robin Hood argument of stating that SEMH provision at Mayfield, comparing this to hearing impairments, it's a difficult one to pull, and I know SEND is pressured at the moment, but I think we need to be really careful in not being dragged into this. And when Councillor Timon stated that, you won't pause this, you'll continue on that route, it just seems like it's dangling a carrot in front of SEMH places, which may then be taken away. Be honest with them about this and just pause the decision now and recognise that more work needs to be done. But this is a constructive amendment. I think it complements the review. We know that consultation has been lacking. We know that, parents feel that they weren't listened to and this was a done deal. So pausing is the right step to make sure that their concerns are heard and to make sure that they know that this review is actually going to be taken forward and it's not going to just be rolled forward with...
Sorry, Councillor George Darling, 1 second. Okay, Councillor Timon, I'll take that point of personal explanation in just a moment. Councillor George Darling, you have 3 minutes left.
Thank you. Where this amendment focuses is putting that pause on and making sure that consultation is undertaken. And to point out, I know the Overview and Scrutiny will consider more points in the decision that was taken, but just focus on them. The hearing units have been at the heart of the community for 60 years. Both are important to the community, and the hearing community and supportive of the hearing community is developed around it. Now, to suggest that taking these away or delivering them in a different way is not a significant decision and doesn't need consultation is beyond belief. So it's important that we do engage with that and we show we are an engaging council. Now, teachers have felt they haven't been listened to. They felt this was presented to them as a done deal. When they suggested alternatives, it wasn't taken on board. And parents felt that they haven't had agency in this decision either. And I think if that consultation exercise had been undertaken properly, then actually we would have probably got to the true information that's here. And at the moment, members are really confused because we're hearing one side from the council and one side from the schools. And I think if there had been genuine engagement there, we would know what the right information is. And my colleagues are unsure of whether this is the right decision now. And that's partially why it's going to overview and scrutiny, and that's the right way to do that. But actually, we need to get that information there. And the second thing I'd say is misinformation was brought up. And I think it's really important that the council stops labelling the concerns brought up by parents and teachers as misinformation. It's completely insulting. And actually, if they'd undertaken consultation, they'd fully understand them. I think the amendments proposed and the pause is to foster genuine listening and consideration through consultation with parents and teachers on this decision. But this cannot happen while the process of closing the units is ongoing. The ongoing closure process could also present a future dilemma, as alluded to by Councillor Tyman, where the council finds the closure to be a mistake, yet funding has already started to be reallocated to SEMH places. I think at the heart of this, and taking this, is humility, and that's what the council really needs to show, and to accept that they might have got this wrong. The council must pause the closure, listen, consider the review, conduct genuine consultation, and if this decision is shown to put the education of hearing impaired children at risk, it must be open to reversing the hearing unit's closure.
Thank you, Councillor George Darling. Councillor Tyman, your point of personal explanation.
Thank you. And I realise that the situation regarding Spires is not the main subject of the petition, but just because it was mentioned that the information I was providing, I'd like to say that the information I provided is based upon an email I had from Alex Newton, the principal at Spires, this week. The change in situation at Spires is very much fundamentally based upon the fact that she had not had any information up until this week that the funding was going to come to support the children that were in Spires from Devon County Council. Now that that funding is secure, the situation has changed significantly. So I was giving you the latest information. I do understand that there were concerns prior to receiving that information from Devon that it wouldn't be there. So I think there is no incompatibility between the earlier statements and the statement I've now made.
Thank you, Councillor Tyman. Councillor Long?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And I'm unclear whether there has been a misunderstanding or whether there has been some misinformation, but the purpose of the amendment is to give, and the pause is to give overview and scrutiny more time and allow sufficient time to be able to do the work they need to. The amendment and the pause does not stop overview and scrutiny from doing anything. The opposite of what has been suggested is true. And it's very weird that the overview and scrutiny work is being welcomed, and Councillor George Darling is quite rightly being congratulated for bringing it. But it does beg the question, why wasn't overview and scrutiny brought in at the very beginning, which could have then unearthed some of the questions, and it could all have been ironed out from the very beginning, which does beg the question about, has this been done in the wrong manner? And I have to say to Councillor Brooke that Children's Overview and Scrutiny doesn't meet in the next month, I understand. So there's no delay happening, because there isn't actually a meeting happening in the next month. And we've been accused of being political this evening when nothing is further from the case. But I have to say that when I walked in, I was advised that the Conservative group were going to accept the amendment, and then all of a sudden they're not accepting the amendment. So you do wonder who is playing politics. And it's also been said twice this evening that all reasonable requests will be accepted. And the petitioners have been more than reasonable. And I would suggest that the amendment is more than reasonable, but it's a flat no. It does feel like the parents who are here this evening, it feels like the council is doing to rather than doing with. I'll leave it at that, Madam Mayor, but I would like to call a recorded vote on the amendment, please.
Thank you. That is sufficient. We'll record the vote. Thank you. Councillor Bye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And the reason why we are not accepting this amendment is down to me. When I walked in this evening and learnt about this amendment, I said no to my leader and colleagues and discussed with professional colleagues. It is in my view that this would add to the uncertainty, and we do not want the delay. We want overview and scrutiny to look at so many of the complex issues that have been raised this evening. And I repeat, absolutely, I will engage with overview and scrutiny. It's entirely up to overview and scrutiny when they have these meetings. I would have thought with a matter of such importance, it would be done sooner rather than later. But with these decisions, in my view and my experience, I think it is best to get on with it. The actual implementation, the changes, will take place in the summer, and how we can possibly refine those changes, that can be influenced very much by what we learn from overview and scrutiny. There was so much that I agreed with from members opposite.
Sorry, Councillor Bye. Councillor George Darling. I'll take that at the end. Thank you. Councillor Bye, you have 4 minutes remaining.
Thank you so much. I agreed with the idea of an inclusive community, and it is about a community, not a classroom. The bit that I clearly am struggling to get across to colleagues, all colleagues, we are not, absolutely not closing down a school. We are decommissioning the units. Some of the units, the places in the units, are not taken up. We are moving to a situation where the money follows the children to meet the needs of those children. And at overview and scrutiny, absolutely what I would recommend you do is look at the finances. It's very difficult to do that in a public forum such as this, because you're talking about monies with individual children, and we don't want to be going on about individual children. That's not fair to them. But looking at the situation for St Margaret's from September onwards, assuming the same children who are there continue to be there, they will be insubstantial funds. And when I was at St Margaret's, absolutely speaking with the head and senior colleagues there, it did come down to the funding. Having the funding in place to carry on with the support. And we are engaged with Devon, so the Director of Children's Services has sent me a letter which she has received from Devon, absolutely confirming that they will be supporting. In fact, we're moving on, because in the past there has been a question over the amount that comes from Devon for the Devon pupils. That now, through this process, we've achieved clarity, and I think that is in fact the benefit of both the schools. It is about the children, absolutely. Is it about their futures? It is about having an inclusive community. The issues that have been raised in the debate are issues that overview and scrutiny can consider. It's about us doing our very, very best for all our children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. And for those children who are in the units, the Spires, the leadership of the school, has absolutely engaged with those children and their families, explaining and reassuring what the change will mean. And at St Margaret's, our SEND officers have been in and met with and explained and engaged with the families and the children. There is absolutely no way that I would support a change on a whim that would damage the well-being of those children and their future opportunities. And absolutely, I will do everything as your lead member to make sure that as this change takes place, that the support is there for them. But the world moves on. The majority of children with a hearing impairment are supported in mainstream settings, in mainstream schools. Absolutely, there's tremendous work at both St Margaret's and Spires. That will continue, but it makes no sense whatsoever to commission empty places
30
when
seconds
there are
remaining, Councillor
children
Bell.
with desperate needs and we are not meeting their needs. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor George Darling, can you just explain your point of personal explanation to us, because I don't think I heard you mentioned.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've just believed that this amendment we've put forward has been represented as delaying the call to...
I'm sorry, that's further debate. It's not a point of personal
Apologies.
explanation.
I might be using the wrong procedure. I'm wondering if we might be able to get some officer clarity on that, in that does this amendment delay overview and scrutiny?
So that wasn't a point of personal explanation, all right? We are going to now move to the vote. Would the Chief Exec please explain about the recorded vote? Thank you.
Members, it is a recorded vote on the amendment that's before you, but I do think it's just important to emphasise, so I will read out the amendment, because I think within the debate there has been confusion, because the amendment is asking that the decision maker, i.e. the Director of Children's Services, be requested to consider pausing the implementation of the decision to decommission, rather than the meeting itself making that decision. And I think, members, before you go to the vote, you just need to be clear on that, because I think it has been confused within the debate. So the amendment has been circulated, but for absolute clarity, the amendment that's before you is to add, and I'll read it in its entirety, that the decision maker, the Director of Children's Services, be requested to consider pausing the implementation of the decision to decommission the hearing impairment units at St Margaret's Academy and Spires College from September 2025, to enable further consultation to be undertaken in light of the concerns raised in the petition, and to enable the Children and Young People's Overview and Scrutiny Sub-Board to complete its review. Members, on that basis and with that clarity having been provided, when I call your name, please indicate how you wish to vote on the amendment. Councillor Emile. For. Councillor Atia Allah.
For.
Councillor Billings.
Against.
Councillor Brooke.
Against.
Councillor Bryant.
Against.
Councillor Bye.
Against.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Cowell.
For.
Councillor George Darling.
For.
Councillor Mandy Darling. Councillor Steve Darling.
For.
Councillor Douglas Dunbar.
For.
Councillor Fellows.
Against.
Councillor Foster.
Against.
Councillor Fox.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Hutchins. Councillor Johns.
For.
Councillor Law.
For.
Councillor Barbara Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Chris Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor Madison.
For.
Councillor Nicolau.
For.
Councillor Penny.
For.
Councillor Pentney.
For.
Councillor Spigania.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
Against.
Councillor Strang.
Against.
Councillor David Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Jacqueline Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Tolshard. Councillor Tranter.
Against.
Councillor Twelves.
Against.
Councillor Tyman. Councillor Verdi.
For.
Members, there were 18 votes for and 18 against. Madam Mayor, please indicate how you wish to use your casting vote on the amendment.
Against. Okay, so the amendment has been lost. We now go back to the original motion. Is there any debate on the original motion? Councillor Tyman?
Yes, I'll be very, very brief. And I think all I would ask is that overview and scrutiny do move on to get this piece of work done as quickly as is reasonable and as thoroughly as is reasonable, and to pick up on all the points that have been made from both sides of the chamber tonight.
Councillor Thomas, you reserve your right.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm not going to go through what I planned to talk about. I think it's important, as we've said already, that overview and scrutiny does this work, that this council endorses the work that overview and scrutiny are about to do, and because of that, I request a recorded vote. I'm on my own. I haven't got one then.
Thank you. That's sufficient numbers for a recorded vote. We will take a recorded vote. Councillor George Darling, you wish to speak on the original motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think with this already going to overview and scrutiny, it is a little bit disappointing, as I think for the parents here, this petition hasn't progressed this issue at all, it seems. It is a shame that this seems to be pushed on, and I worry that with the decision being pushed on now, with it going to overview and scrutiny, we're going to end up in a situation where one SEND need is played off against another after this report comes through and this decision is eventually pushed through. That's my concern. I will support this going to overview and scrutiny, but that is my real concern.
Okay, if there's no further debate, we will go to Councillor Bye.
Thank you so much, and it's been a full discussion, and you absolutely have my word. Colleagues at Overview and Scrutiny, Cabinet colleagues are in listening mode, and any reasonable recommendations that you make, we will consider. So let's get over to Overview and Scrutiny, and that's what this recommendation is all about, that the petition be referred to the Children and Young People's Overview and Scrutiny Subboard for further investigation and as part of its review arising from the Council call for action on the same issue. I think tonight we've appreciated that there are differences of view, but I think there are still misunderstandings and there are certainly great complexities. So it is now over to Overview and Scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to pass over to the Chief Executive to do the recorded vote.
Members, when I call your name, please indicate how you wish to vote on the substantive motion. Councillor Emile.
For.
Councillor Atia Allah.
For.
Councillor Billings.
For.
Councillor Brooke.
For.
Councillor Bryant.
For.
Councillor Bai.
For.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Cowell.
For.
Councillor George Darling.
For.
Councillor Mandy Darling. Councillor Steve Darling.
For.
Councillor Douglas Dunbar.
For.
Councillor Fellows.
For.
Councillor Foster.
For.
Councillor Fox. Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Hutchins. Councillor Johns. Councillor Law.
For.
Councillor Barbara Lewis.
For.
Councillor Chris Lewis.
For.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor Madison.
For.
Councillor Nicolau.
For.
Councillor Penny.
For.
Councillor Pentney.
For.
Councillor Spigagna.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Strang.
For.
Councillor David Thomas.
For.
Councillor Jacqueline Thomas.
For.
Councillor Tolshard. Councillor Tranter. Councillor Twelves.
For.
Councillor Tyman.
For.
Councillor Verdi.
For.
Madam Mayor, there were 36 votes for, therefore unanimous.
Okay, that's unanimous in favour. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I now move to item number 7, members' questions. The questions and answers have been circulated and are noted as submitted. Members, these are available on your iPads under late reports packs. I will ask for any supplementary questions. For those members asking a supplementary question, it must arise directly out of the original question or the reply. May I remind members that supplementary questions shall not include a statement, and I will be interrupting you if I consider your supplementary question is a statement. Please note there is a time limit of 1 minute to ask a supplementary question. The response time for each supplementary question is 3 minutes, and the overall maximum time for members' questions is 30 minutes. I refer to question 1 in respect of a response from Kavanagh Homes regarding residents' concerns about the play park on Plantation Way in Torquay. Councillor Long, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. Just to ask that if there is any further information from Kavanagh Homes, then presumably the Cabinet member will let me know, or will I have to do another written question to get that information? Thank you.
Councillor Chris Lewis, please provide a response.
Thank you very much, Councillor Long. Of course I will keep you informed, and in the future, if you have a problem and they haven't done it, give me a ring, because I don't want you to wait until the next council meeting, which is not until May. But once we have a response from Kavanagh Homes, we'll of course
At the end of this month,
contact you. Oh, yeah. Well, history shows that Kavanagh will probably not get back to us by the next council meeting. But anytime, give me a ring, as you know, and I'm very happy to take up the subject. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll refer to question 2 in respect of painting double yellow lines on Malden Road. Councillor Douglas Dunbar, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Thank you.
Firstly, I have to say that this afternoon, as I prepared to come here, I was absolutely amazed to find that lines had started to be painted on Malden Road. thank you very much. However, currently the more dangerous side, the right-hand side where people do park, still remains unpainted. I would just like some reassurance that that will carry on. Those lines will be painted, please.
Councillor Billings, please provide a response.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Douglas Dunbar, for the opportunity to explain about the wonderful work that our team are doing with the line painting. I'm glad you noticed the commencement of work on the way to the meeting. I'd asked very nicely with the team whether they could demonstrate to us all the fantastic work that they're doing all around the bay in terms of catching up on the inherited backlog of line painting. You've seen that they've started on one of the TROs, the traffic regulation orders, that implements a road safety improvement in your ward. I've corresponded with yourself and your ward colleague about others that they'll be doing in your ward. I'm aware, such is the use of the kit, that we've actually worn some of it out, so it's going in for servicing next week. But I'm not fully understanding whether we're going to get that done before or after the kit has to go in for servicing. But clearly, we've started the work on that area. It's got to be finished, and it will be at the earliest opportunity. But I would highlight to members the fact that we've already worn some of our brand new line painting kit out just demonstrates, and it's got to go back into servicing, just demonstrates how hard the team has been working to get all this done. So I would really pass my thanks on to the team, and I look forward to, by the next time of our next council meeting, whether it's February or May, you being able to, before the meeting, share the enthusiasm that it's all complete. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I move to item 8, the Torbay Council Annual Pay Policy Statement and Review of Pension Discretions. Please refer to page 21. Can Councillor Jackie Thomas please put the Cabinet's motion to the Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the purpose of this report, section 38.1 of the Localism Act 2011, requires English and Welsh authorities to produce a pay policy statement for each financial year. This is a statutory requirement and must be approved by full council. The pay policy statement draws together the Council's overarching policies on pay and conditions and will be published on the Council's website. So basically, nothing much has changed regarding the publication of the pay policy statement, which was approved by Council in February 2024. In regards to the pay policy rates, we still have not had the rates and banding, so we are still waiting for these from the government. Regarding our multipliers, they have changed for the positive, narrowing the difference between the highest and lowest paid officers and staff. I look forward to full support from members regarding this policy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackie Thomas. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I rise to second and reserve my rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Billings. I now invite debate. If there's no debate, Councillor Billings, you reserved your right.
I think Councillor Thomas, Madam Mayor, has already set out the proposal in detail, but I draw attention, as she did, to the benefits that this brings in terms of the narrowing of the differential between the highest and lowest paid, which is helping those who are on the lower pay stratas succeed in society, and I'd endorse this to all members. Thank you.
I move to the vote. All those... Councillor Thomas. Councillor Jackie Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to go to the vote. Thank you.
I now move to the vote. All those in favour? carried unanimously. Thank you. I move to item 9, Civic Mayor-elect and Deputy Civic Mayor-elect 25-26. Can Councillor David Thomas please put his motion to the Council?
Thank you indeed, Madam Mayor, and I would like to thank the leaders opposite, both Councillor Cowell and Councillor Long, in being able to get to our leaders agreement, which will be coming forward at the next council meeting, which enables me to make this very short and sweet. There'll be much more time later on to talk about the virtues of the members. So effectively, I will simply move the recommendation, which is that Councillor Barbara Lewis be selected as the Civic Mayor-elect for the 25-26 municipal year, and that Councillor Foster be selected as Deputy Civic Mayor-elect for the 2025-2026 municipal year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to second, I think. I'd like to second this, and as Councillor Thomas said, speeches later on, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open debate, I can confirm, in accordance with Standing Order A9.1, that both Councillors Barbara Lewis and Hazel Foster have given their nomination, have given consent for their nominations. I now invite debate. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. As colleagues and people watching will know, following the dreadful annual council meeting last May, the council, as has been referenced, has been going through a facilitation process, and this process comes to fruition at the council meeting later this month. And we look forward to that, because that will be a positive experience, I'm sure. The Lib Dem group had hoped that as the facilitation process went on, that the approach of the Conservative administration would change. Sadly, that has not happened as of yet. And if we just give, for example, the example, and I've said this before, example of the devolution and local government reorganisation, where myself and Councillor Law have had far more information and involvement from other councils and the LGA, Local Government Association, on this than from our own council. And given the lack of positive change from the administration, the Lib Dem group does not feel at this time able to support the Conservative nomination at the moment, but that does not mean to say in future years we won't. In terms of the Deputy Mayor, I have had some email correspondence from people concerned about the potential further politicisation of the mayoral position, and in particular about the potential consort of the proposed Deputy Mayor, and that being used to promote a politician.
Sorry, Councillor Long. Can we please keep it on topic? We're just talking about Councillor Barbara Lewis becoming Civic Mayor and Councillor Hazel Foster becoming Deputy Mayor. We're not talking about consorts. We're not talking about any of it. We need to remain relevant, please.
I have had correspondence with the monitoring officer on this today and wasn't aware that it was not relevant. I'm just giving some correspondence. It's just going to be incredibly brief, but the concerns that I had raised with me were in fact allayed because I was pointed to the local protocol on civic and ceremonial from the Constitution, and in particular certain paragraphs which I can go into. But the Constitution says that for both the ceremonial mayor and Deputy Ceremonial Mayor, they are required to uphold high standards of conduct as outlined in paragraph 2.2 of the protocol and not bring the council into disrepute, specifically as the role of Ceremonial Mayor is a politically neutral role and their consort and escort will remain politically neutral at all times.
Councillor Long, we're not talking about the consorts or escorts. We are talking about the fact that we are electing Councillor Barbara Lewis and Councillor Hazel Foster as Deputy Mayor. We're not talking about consorts. So can we please keep to the motion? Thank you.
And I was going to say that I was very assured by the comments from the monitoring officer on that, so it was a positive thing, and I look forward to that protocol being upheld. Thank you.
Councillor Steve Darling.
Thank you. I think it would be extremely helpful if the Conservatives could explain to the Chamber how appropriate it is that somebody is being appointed by this council who has been wanting by a standards hearing, and what message does that send to the community and our staff? Thank you.
If there's no further debate, we'll go back to Councillor David Thomas. You're right.
Thank you very much indeed. And I had hoped, as I said, we have spent a long time on the leaders' agreement that was due to come back to this council on the 27th of February. And to be honest, this was not the kind of attitude that I was expecting to come forward. We had agreed in the leaders' agreement, which as I say, was due to come on the 27th, that effectively the administration, we were putting in clear places, the administration would look...
Councillor Thomas, thank you. Just a note to all members, we are keeping it relevant and to the point. Now, Councillor Thomas, if we can just sum up about the motion, about making Barbara Lewis and Councillor Hazel Foster Deputy and Civic Mayor. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much for keeping me online. In which case, I shall sum up and say more than happy to move Councillor Barbara Lewis as the Civic Mayor-elect and Councillor Foster as the Deputy Civic Mayor-elect for 25-26. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I now move to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? And the motion's carried. Thank you. I move to item 10, Standing Order D11 in relation to overview and scrutiny. Call in an urgency. Please refer to page 47. This report is for voting and there's no vote necessary. Thank you very much, members, for your attendance today. I now close the meeting.